The smell hits first. Hot asphalt and petroleum, baked together for weeks with nowhere to go. It bleeds through the cracked passenger window in slow, invisible waves. Then, the vials has gone past warm into something punishing. That particular synthetic heat, sittings, that accumulates until you realize you've been sitting in it too long. She reaches for the steering wheel without thinking. The plastic is nearly untouchable. The radiator fan has been making for the last 11 miles. Not a consistent noise, frantic and metallic. The sound of something working against its own failure. It rattles in 3 short bursts, then 2, then 1 long shudder, then nothing. The silence has weight to it, the specific quiet of a machine that has stopped trying. 47 years old, sweat tracing a slow line along her jaw, a manila envelope across her lap with both hands laid flat on top of it. She is not panicking. Hence, she does what has always become too strange to process in motion. She goes still. And through the windshield. At the end of a cracked sidewalk fractured by years of frost and neglect, stands a building, terracotta tile above the entrance. Windows sealed behind plywood, some of it gone grey, and bolted to the front door an orange municipal placard. One word, Condman. She owns it. 19 years. That is how long Nora taught 11th grade American literature at Braddock High School. 19 years of Steinbeck in October and Morrison in February, and the particular exhaustion of convincing 16-year-olds that language was worth their attention. She was good at it. That part is not in dispute. What ended her career was not a performance review. It was a spreadsheet. In a 40-minute budget restructuring meeting, the district eliminated her position alongside the drama department, the school librarian, and, as if to underline the indignity, the building's only functioning water fountain. She was handed a folder with severance information and a sheet explaining how to extend her health insurance at her own expense. After that, a short-term lease that expired before she found stable work, an adjunct position that offered 2 sections in the fall and nothing in the spring, a sublet that dissolved badly in March over money that wasn't hers to owe. Her bank account, as of this morning, holds $14.62. This is not the consequence of recklessness. It is the arithmetic of a system that consumed her incrementally, one institutional decision at a time. She carries no self-pity about it. Self-pity requires believing the outcome was surprising. What she carries instead is more useful. A meticulous, almost involuntary memory for exactly how things actually work. The letter had been forwarded 3 times. First to the school district's administrative office, where someone penciled a question mark beside her name. Then to the apartment she no longer lived in. Then to a cousin in Pittsburgh who texted, "This looks official. You want me to open it?" Her great-uncle Roland Vane had died in April and left her a property. The estate attorney, Miss Heckert, had the exhaustion of someone who delivered bad news so often it no longer required tone. Roland had purchased the Alderton Lyric Theatre at 114 Friel Street in 1989 for $3,100 at a tax lien auction. He had done nothing with it for 35 years. No renovations, no tenants, no attempt at sale. The attached municipal lien, code violations accrued and compounded, totaled $22,847.33. It transferred with the deed. The city had also filed an active demolition order 3 weeks prior. "It's a liability wearing a deed," Miss Heckert said. Nora took the paperwork anyway. She had nowhere else to be, and she had spent 19 years teaching students that the most important information in any document is almost never the part written in large print. The air inside is worse. Outside the heat moves, barely, but it moves. Inside the Alderton Lyric it has nowhere to go. It sits thick with decades of dust and old wood, and something sweetly chemical underneath both that she cannot immediately name. Not rot exactly. Something drier than rot. She stands in the lobby, letting her eyes adjust, breathing through her mouth. The balcony rail has collapsed along its left third. Velvet seating below reduced to rusted spring frames wearing the ghost of upholstery. Water damage runs the east wall in long brown streaks that stopped years ago and simply stayed. Nora doesn't move through the space like a demolition inspector. She moves like a researcher, cataloging what survived rather than tallying what hasn't. Near the side entrance, a cornerstone tablet. 1912. Still level, still legible. Above the stage, a hand-painted proscenium arch, colors faded but brushwork intact. Acanthus leaves rendered with care that no one bothered to photograph before boarding the windows. Along the upper walls, plasterwork medallions in rows, most of them whole. Then she reaches the back of the stage and stops. One section of floor is wrong. The boards have been pried up and replaced. Recently, imperfectly, by someone who was in a hurry or believed no one would notice. The city vehicle is parked half on the curb, the way people park when they don't expect to be questioned about it. Nora hears him before she sees him. A loud, unhurried voice bouncing off the stripped lobby walls, discussing a Thursday scheduling conflict. Deputy Zoning Inspector Gerald Pruitt, 54, clipboard tucked under one arm, doesn't hear her enter. When he turns and finds her standing there, his expression shifts not to alarm but to the specific irritation of a man whose process has been interrupted. He ends the call without saying goodbye. The demolition order, he explains, was filed under City Ordinance 7C, accelerated timeline. Structural hazard. The 60-day appeal window had opened and closed the prior month. Before the probate letter completed its 3-stop journey to reach her, he uses the word unfortunate once, then again, then a third time, with a downward inflection that seems directed at her presence in general. His manner is not cruel. It is something more effective than cruel. The absolute confidence of a man who has never once been told that his paperwork was wrong. He doesn't ask what she intends to do with the building. He has already decided she can't do anything. That is his first mistake. The county clerk gave her the file without resistance. 41 pages, rubber-banded, printed on paper that had gone soft in the humidity. Nora drove to a dollar store parking lot on Talbot Avenue, with 2 surviving trees at the far end, and read it in 98-degree air that moved just enough to remind her it wasn't helping. She read the way she used to teach, not for plot, but for structure. What the document said, and what the architecture of it was designed to obscure. The first anomaly was on page 4. Ordinance 7C applied specifically to properties carrying no documented historic designation of any category. It had a precondition, and Pruitt had never acknowledged one. The second anomaly was the filing date, March 14th, 5 weeks before a city council vote on a commercial redevelopment zone, whose boundary map, when she looked it up on her phone, covered the Alderton Lyrics block with clean, deliberate precision. The third anomaly was buried in a footnote on page 31. A 1986 Pennsylvania State Historic Inventory Survey, listed as potentially applicable to the subject property. Nora uncapped her pen and wrote the reference number on the back of her left hand. Then she drove to the library. The local history room was kept cool for the documents rather than the people. The lateral file cabinets were labeled by decade in hand-typed tape strips, some of them peeling. The 1986 Pennsylvania State Historic Inventory Survey was in the third drawer she tried. Physical pages, not digitized, held with a binder clip that had left a rust shadow on the cover sheet. Filed correctly, never mentioned again. The survey had formally evaluated the Alderton Lyric in August 1986. 2 assessors, 4 site visits, 12 pages of architectural analysis. Their conclusion: Category 2 historic significance, one of only 4 surviving pre-World War I vaudeville houses in western Pennsylvania. She read the implication section twice. A Category 2 designation triggered a mandatory 180-day review period before any demolition authority could be executed. Not bypassable by municipal ordinance alone. A formal state-level override was required. Its own filing, its own timeline, its own paper trail. None of that process had occurred. Nora photographed every page, working from cover sheet to the final assessor signature. Her hands were trembling slightly. Not fear, but the specific adrenaline of finding exactly what you went looking for. The survey had never been entered into the municipal database. She arrived at 4:53 in the morning, before the heat had fully reconstituted itself. By 7, the building would be unworkable. She had maybe 2 hours. She brought a pry bar. The boards came up without resistance. Beneath them, a dry, sealed crawl space. 3 flat-lidded wooden crates and a metal document box on a poured concrete base untouched by moisture, protected by sheer architectural accident. The crates held original production materials, hand-lithographed vaudeville posters from 1912 through 1924, wardrobe pieces in muslin, promotional photographs for performers, including one-act Nora, recognized immediately from years of teaching American cultural history. But the 4th crate, shoved against the back wall and nearly invisible in the dim light, was different. Smaller, far heavier than it had any right to be. She pried the lid. Inside, packed in deteriorating burlap, were coins. Hundreds of them, gold coins. Double Eagle $20 pieces, St. Gordon's design, minted between 1907 and 1932. She picked one up with 2 fingers. It sat cold and impossibly heavy in her palm against the crawl space heat. There was also a cloth pouch, smaller foreign gold pieces and 3 unset gemstones wrapped individually in wax paper. 2 deep green, one the color of dried blood. She sat back on her heels and did not move for a full minute. The document box held handwritten correspondence from the 1940s documenting that the theater had functioned as a covert coordination site during the 1943 Pennsylvania steel workers' labor dispute. Provenance, the kind that universities acquire, the kind that foundations fund. But the coins in that 4th crate had been sitting 60 years in darkness beneath a stage floor. A city was 6 weeks from turning to rubble. That was the gold mine. She almost missed it. Lifting the muslin on the 2nd crate, the wood grain registered wrong. She looked closer. The joinery was too clean. No warping, no surface oxidation, no grime in the grain from decades of ambient neglect. She checked the other 2 production crates. Same construction, same lumber. Built within the last 4 to 7 years by someone who knew exactly what they were housing. But the 4th crate, the coin crate, was genuinely old, possibly original to the building. She turned back to the floorboards. The prying and replacement had happened within weeks, not months. The wood fibers at the seams still fresh, not yet darkened by air exposure. Someone had been here after the demolition order was filed. Someone who knew what was underneath. Whether they had found the coin crate and left it, or simply hadn't reached it, was impossible to say. What was clear was the geometry of it. The demolition order had created a closing window, a deadline before the structure became legally inaccessible. Nora photographed everything with the slow, methodical patience of someone who understood this might need to hold up in a room with lawyers. Crate joinery, coin stacks, gemstones against the concrete floor for scale, the floorboards from 4 angles. Then she picked up the document box and the coin crate, left everything else exactly in place, and walked out into the morning heat. It took 40 minutes of phone transfers to find the successor organization in Pittsburgh. Another 10 minutes to reach the right person. Dr. Theo Gaspar, their archivist, had the precise diction of someone who rewarded patience in himself and expected it in others. When Nora described the 1940s correspondence, dates, subject matter, signatories, he went quiet in a way that was recognition, not confusion. The 1943 labor documentation was primary source material for a period that existed almost entirely in secondary accounts. The collection could qualify for State Cultural Heritage Emergency Protection, a designation that froze all demolition activity with no municipal override provision. Then she told him about the coins. A longer silence. What denomination? Double Eagles, St. Gordon's, at least 240 in the crate. Foreign gold pieces too, and 3 unset stones, emeralds and a ruby. He said he knew a numismatic specialist at Carnegie Mellon. Don't clean anything. Don't mention the coins to anyone connected to the city. Then, before they ended the call, he told her something else. His organization had received an anonymous inquiry about the Alderton Lyrics contents approximately 6 weeks ago. Before the demolition order was filed, the heat outside had reached 101 degrees. Nora was on the yellow legal pad, the pen skipping from sweat on her fingers. She switched hands and kept writing. Nora filed the Emergency Cultural Heritage Protection request before noon. Photographs of the 1986 survey, the correspondence, and a written account of the crawl space contents attached. The procedural challenge to the demolition order went in the same afternoon. 2 documents. 2 separate tracks. A state preservation officer contacted Braddock's city office 41 hours later. This is where Pruitt's paperwork stopped being armor. On page 7 of the demolition filing, in the certification section above his signature, Pruitt had attested in writing that no existing historic designation of any category applied to the subject property. Standard language, the kind that gets initialed without being read because it had never once caused a problem before. The 1986 survey made it false. Whether Pruitt had known about the survey when he signed was now a secondary question. What mattered procedurally was simpler and more unforgiving. He had certified an incorrect material fact on an official municipal filing. The demolition order was suspended. The accelerated timeline was voided. An internal city inquiry was opened. Carla Seppes took the case pro bono after Dr. Gaspar's organization connected them. The particular generosity of someone who recognizes a clean legal argument when handed one. Her office had 2 box fans working opposite corners, accomplishing mostly noise. The LLC filings were public record. Schemes built inside bureaucratic process always leave edges. 3 months before the demolition order, a regional development LLC had quietly secured an option agreement on the entire block containing the Alderton Lyric. It converted to a purchase upon approval of the commercial rezoning vote. The same vote whose agenda date sat 5 weeks after Pruitt's filing date. Buried in the contingency clauses, the deal voided automatically if any structure on the block carried an active historic designation at the time of the vote. Someone needed that building to have no designation. Pruitt's certification had provided exactly that. Among the LLC's listed principals was a name Nora recognized from the City Council's public roster. The heat was still oppressive. She had been rotating the same 2 shirts for 3 weeks, ordered nothing from the coffee shop where she and Carla met, and took her notes by hand because her laptop had died in May. She wrote down the council member's name and underlined it twice. The formal designation letter arrived on a Thursday. 9 weeks after Nora first sat in that parking lot with a demolition file, and 98-degree air coming through the windows, the Alderton Lyric Theater was hereby designated a Pennsylvania heritage structure, the highest protection tier in the state's framework. The building could not be demolished. Not by ordinance, not by municipal filing, not by anyone. Then Dr. Fatima Osi, the Carnegie Mellon numismatic specialist, came to examine the coins. She spent 4 hours with the crate, a lupe, and white cotton gloves. When she set down the last coin and removed her gloves, she was quiet for a moment. 263 double eagle gold pieces, several from years with extremely limited production runs, condition ranging from fine to nearly uncirculated. The foreign pieces included pre-revolutionary French gold louis and 3 Maria Theresa thalers, the gemstones, 2 Colombian emeralds, 1 Burmese ruby, unset but measurable. Her written valuation placed the conservative auction estimate at $614,000. With the right buyer and the right room, she noted, it could exceed double that. Nora read the number 3 times. She had $14.62 the morning she first sat outside this building. The cultural artifacts from the production crates were assessed separately, valued at up to $231,000. A university press contacted Nora about the labor correspondence. A preservation grant was filed, and Carla challenged the municipal lien, $22,847.33, on the basis that historic status had been improperly suppressed in city records, rendering the code enforcement actions procedurally invalid. The lien was reduced, then suspended, then removed entirely. The development deal collapsed quietly. No announcement, just a filing withdrawal and an LLC that stopped returning calls. The rezoning vote was tabled indefinitely. The block on Friel Street remained what it had always been, which turned out to be considerably more than anyone with an option agreement had wanted to reckon with. Pruitt's employment entered a review process that moved with the slowness of institutions protecting themselves while appearing to act. The council member whose name Nora had underlined twice did not file for re-election. He cited personal reasons. No one pressed him on it. The auction took place in October, in a Pittsburgh room with padded chairs and people who had flown in from 3 states. The final gavel came down at $742,000 for the coin collection. The emeralds and rubies sold separately 3 weeks later for an amount Nora still has difficulty saying aloud without pausing in the middle of it. She did not leave Braddock. Dr. Gaspar's organization offered her a consulting position, part-time, focused on identifying at-risk historic properties across the region before someone with a clipboard and a demolition order found them first. She accepted. The Alderton Lyric entered formal restoration planning. Years away, money now available for the first time. It is still August. The heat has not broken. Nora stands near the stage, the air around her thick and close, carrying old wood and plaster dust and that sweetly chemical undertone she long since stopped trying to identify. The coin crate is gone. The document box sits open on a folding table. The ledger is in her hand. She was always a teacher. She just needed something worth teaching, and it had been waiting for her, 60 years in the dark, under a floor that everyone else had already written off. Nora saved a piece of history that a corrupt system tried to turn into asphalt. If you were in her place, carrying just $14 to your name, would you have risked it all to fight the city, or sold the rights immediately? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below.